our work session. We have some topics that we have lined up to discuss during our work session as well. So if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Chief John Ward, will you lead us, please, as you walk in the door? Let us pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Ms. Hamilton, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Hostetler?
Present.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Corman?
Present.
Mr. Ellison?
Here.
Mr. Pratt?
Here.
Mr. Livingston?
Here.
Mr. Culbertson?
Here.
Judge Covington?
Present. Thank you very much. Our first order of business is consideration of a bid, the farmer's market. I shared the bid tabulation sheet with you all, and it is the recommendation from our architect and from me that we reject the bid received from Tecton for 1.9. The base bid was 1.9 million and some short change that I shared with you all. And I would like to also recommend at the same time that we re-advertise for bids the Farmers Market Pavilion. And we are doing some value engineering, and I shared some of those items that we are going to adjust in this next bid. I'm going to meet again with Branstad Carroll, and I will share with you all any additional recommendations that they have for value engineering, but I wanted to go ahead and do this today so that we could get it turned around and back out. And it looks like the bid would be due back in December, early December. It'd give us a little time to try to see if we cannot solicit more bidders for this project. I think the more bidders we have, the better chance we have at a competitive price. So with that said, are there questions or comments?
So I know we only have one bid, but did anybody else pick up the package?
Yes, there was one other that Branstad Carroll fully anticipated them to place a bid,
okay,
and had indicated they thought they were going to bid, but for whatever reason they did not, and they've reached back out to them, and they're also reaching out to some additional contractors.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Where's this Tecton construction out of?
Nicholasville, I believe.
Okay, I hadn't heard of them.
Yeah.
Will we make the final recommendations on which of these engineering changes are done, or are we going to bid it with these done? Is my question.
Those were the recommendations for changes, and they might share additional. I would share those with you, but my hope is that we can go ahead and authorize them to put it back out to bid, knowing those changes are recommended. And the hope is that we wouldn't have to change the scope of the project much more. But if this doesn't, if we don't get good bids that we feel like are competitive, then I might come back and recommend to you that we change the scope of the project to a timber frame consideration. And my only concern about that is just the lifetime maintenance, and with the steel structure that we're hoping to get, you're going to have much better long-term maintenance luck with that than a timber frame. So I'm very hopeful that by putting it back out to bid, we'll have more competitive bids come in, and by making these adjustments in value engineering, that it'll reduce it enough as well that we can navigate with it.
Could
forward.
the architects be able to maybe just, so I think Brian would feel probably more comfortable, is at least something comes back out to us with a rendering of what if they're, because I think something about the height and whatnot.
We hadn't proposed reducing the height. We reduced the end length 6 feet on each end.
Gotcha. Okay.
That
was my
eliminated.
concern, just making it too small. Like if 12, we're going to take off 12 feet. And I know,
6 on each end.
Yeah, and I know that.
And it's 140. I think it's 141 or 114. I don't have it right here. It's one of those two. I might have switched them in my head, but by taking the 6 off, I don't think. And what it also does is gets rid of 4 columns.
That's what I was thinking.
Is what they said to me. That, and it's still, of course, they feel like would be 100% stable.
Sure.
And then they had a concrete pad underneath the whole thing. We're eliminating that, and we'll just have the current asphalt.
I think that's okay.
I mean, it's okay.
How will, what's the kind of maintenance on that if they're going to resurface the entire parking lot back there?
I'm glad JR's here.
How do you do that under the?
Can you help me
structure?
answer that question?
They do it all the time.
Can they asphalt around?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a big deal. I wouldn't think. 'Cause
And they had an alternate.
You shouldn't have to asphalt the whole parking lot, just around it.
Okay.
But they had an alternate in the bid that was just a top coat of the whole thing for like $43,000. Of course, we didn't. That's not in consideration anymore. We'll whatever construction's done to put the footers in and put the posts in, we'll asphalt around and patch it. But then also, like, just give everybody a thought process. We'd included essentially a closet down there, and the closet was going to be lockable, and it was going to be able to hold all the electrical and water, so you could lock it. What they're recommending now is just a small wall, like a knee wall, that will have lockable cases, and then you have a water spigot that's lockable, but it's not, it's not behind a door. That was like $28,000 for just that. And then the electrical, the bid came back at $129,000. I've asked them to consider asking the bidder to tell us how much they had in that for where we had added the 4 EV car chargers. We might have to just wire for that and then add them later. So that was a change possibly. And then there was one other thing that they were recommending as well. Ryan, you got it's 6 feet shorter on each end with eliminating posts.
Concrete cupola.
Yeah, the cupola was like $35,000. We can live without the cupola.
I need to go into the cupola and
I don't
closet
like cupolas
business.
anyway. Every cupola I've got leaks.
So
I mean, all my cupolas leak too.
So, would there be any other questions?
Well, just a comment, like on the electrical and the water, not being behind a locked door. I know that's a lot of money, but you really don't want those readily accessible to the public, even with locked panels.
We'll have water keys and stuff like that though, still? I mean, right? So it's still not accessible.
Totally, but a lot of people got water keys.
I know. I all I was trying to do was get the cost down,
Right.
and still have the scope of the project.
There's a way to lock it down. So.
Well, and the thing is, when you're talking about, let's say it comes back at, I don't know, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 5, $28,000, and that is not a lot. I mean, that's like saying, paying $300,000 for a house, but I'm not going to pay $10,000 for upgraded carpet or tile or whatever. Well, in the scheme of things, at the end of the day, over the long term, it's not a lot of money for as long as that structure is going to be served in the community.
So, you all tell me, in the pleasure of the court, do you all want to leave that lockable closet in there?
Can they shoot us a little bit, like I would need to see it, I guess, to see exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
For me personally, because I don't really understand.
So on one end, they had a wall, and just a shallow closet that were all the panels were going to be behind a door, and then also a water spigot that where you could put a hose and lock it behind a door.
Is
It's
it
just a
metal-
very
metal
shallow
structure?
No, it's masonry.
Okay.
It'd have a metal
Gotcha.
door.
Yeah, metal
But that was
door.
$28,000 estimated.
But if you think long-term, if this structure's there for 25 years, I mean,
Yeah.
And then what they were proposing was a masonry wall that would have just a lockable cabinet for the fuse box.
Do you know how much the concrete
If
was?
they left it exposed, yeah.
Because that had to be a huge cost of it. Concrete.
The concrete, the bidder did not share the concrete cost with them.
Also-
can we ask for a breakdown?
Yeah, like I'm saying, I'm thinking
in
like
the
if you
bids?
took the concrete out, we might be able to keep more of these things in because concrete just keeps going up. I'm sure it was a significant portion of this construction cost.
That was crazy.
I mean, we can get an estimate for what the concrete, but he did not share what he had in the bid for concrete.
So what do we need, Judge? Motion?
Motion to reject.
We
I make a
had
motion
a
that we
motion to
reject.
reject. So there's a motion to reject, a second from Mr. Hosser. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to reject bid passes. The next item is, do we authorize Branstad Carroll to put it back out to bid with the aforementioned changes? And they were going to get with me today if they had any other recommendations, and I could send them to you, but I don't, there's only so much you can cut off a metal building with no walls on it.
Judge, and some of those things like the closet potentially for the electric and water, that could be an alternate.
So would you like me to ask them to make the rebid it with those changes, but make the closet an alternate?
That's a good idea.
Could be.
That's why you're on this court, Mr. Hostetler. All right, so is that a motion?
Now, do you want, as an alternate, that versus the knee wall? Is that how you want it to show?
The knee wall will be in the bid, but
Oh, I guess you put
the knee wall would be in there,
but
but the alternate would be,
Gotcha.
I would also put the 6 feet on each end as an alternate.
gotcha.
I mean that.
I can do that. Anything else?
I'll make that
Motion, second from Mr. Pratt. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. I will communicate with you all after I communicate with Branstad Carroll. Thank you very much. New hire, change, fire department, Chief John Ward's with us. We have 3 openings, is that correct, Chief? And you have one recommendation along with Mr. Mudrack. Mr. Mudrack is at a training with Kara Oliver today, and that recommendation is to hire.
Elliot Baldridge.
All right.
He was recently employed with us 3 or 4 weeks ago, had resigned and went somewhere else, and he's asking to come back.
Good employee.
Good employee, left in good standing.
Any other questions?
motion.
Motion. Second from Mr. Corman. Any other questions?
Do we have to state what the salary's gonna be, or
He'll return to his salary that he was at when he left.
Okay.
And I can't,
that's fine.
I
I
can't
think that's
remember
all we need
exactly
for
what it
the
was.
minutes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we'll make sure we send that email to, but it was,
Yeah, back to where it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
Same as,
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
And then we have one more item, county attorney's office position. I'll let Mr. Culbertson share this request with you all.
Thank you, sir. And I had sent an email out, and I've discussed, this with a couple of you, but if anybody else has questions, please ask. My proposal is to create a new assistant Scott County attorney position, which would focus on child support and family court matters, dependency, neglect, and abuse. My reasoning for doing that is I've just, over the last year, noticed a need down there to try to kind of improve the performance, and I think this will help. This is I believe, a cost-neutral change. The funding for this position will be created from 3 places. One, we have an unfilled child support caseworker position, so we have some money from that. We also have Clay McKnight, everybody knows Clay, who's county attorney for a long time, and has been an assistant in our office, has given me notice that he is leaving at the end of this month. So I'm proposing to use money that we were paying Clay towards this position. And then we also had a cost savings from we created a part-time victim advocate position, and we saved some money by not paying a full-time person there. So, and that's summarized in the email that I sent out. So that my ask is that you approve me creating that position, and then I would like to go ahead and post it next week.
The volume of work in the child support division is pretty.
It's a high volume.
Pretty high volume, correct?
We have currently 4 case workers down there. I think it'll help to have an attorney down there, full time to
And they're
help manage
focused.
that and focus on that. And I think my just assessment, larger counties, we've never really done this in our office in terms of specialization. We've kind of, all of us do a little bit of everything, but larger counties like Fayette or Jessamine or wherever tend to have attorneys that specialize in child support and family. So I just kind of feel like we're to that. That's where we are. It's time to. So that's my goal. Anyway.
Questions?
I'll make a motion.
Motion from Mr. Ellison, second from Mr. Hostetler.
And Judge, I will make a comment because my wife and I, we adopted a little girl 2 years ago now, and that's a pretty intense process. And I can see his point about that person that's focused on that, because of course we did it in the middle of COVID, which didn't help things, but still the county attorney's office had a big role in that as we went through that process. So
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks for your comment.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Now, that's all I have for business to take action on. We need to adjourn from this meeting. Motion.
Second.
A second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned out of our business meeting. Now we'll transition immediately to our work session. We have guests, Joe Winston, Jeff Lott, as on our Zoom. And a few weeks ago, Jeff shared data from a study that Joe and Jeff had referred to earlier that was going on that couldn't be released. And we essentially asked if we could circle back once that data was released. And we have reviewed that. The courts had it to review and sent out and shared, asked for questions. And the logical next step was to come back and just have a visit short Q&A session for Joe and Jeff. If any court members want to ask any questions related to that data. And then the big picture is that this all stems from a request from the Net Recovery Corporation to consider Scott County Fiscal Court investing $110,000 over 3 years into the sober study proposal that they have proposed. And they're hoping to get over 500 individuals that would be a part of this study across the state, and working with counties across the state to conduct this study. Joe, I'll let you or Jeff add to that. And then I had sent an email, and I don't think I got the additional information, but just wanting to know the counties that had confirmed or already signed up for the study, and then we'll let you all take it from there.
Jeff, do you want to talk to counties, or shall I?
Yeah, sure, I can mention that. We have 3 counties so far that have signed up and paid. We have an additional 3 who have made verbal commitments they're going to participate. They haven't yet paid us. The 3 that have committed are Meade, Bullitt, and what is Joe? What's Charles County? Shelby County. Thank you. And the 3 verbal commitments are from East, Letcher, Clay, and Knott County.
Gotcha.
And Judge, I would say, if I could just kind of set the table for a minute, we had expected to be further along at this point. I think that we strongly believe that the state would participate in this. And we think that when the state backed out, I think that was hard for a lot of folks because they served it validly. We now know a lot more. We know that the state is looking to invest in a new drug called ibogaine. That's pretty tough competition for us. So I think what I would say at the moment, we're continuing to try to raise the full amount of funds from counties, not from the state. It's a bigger lift. That means we're going to co-invest ourselves to be successful. I'll talk in a moment about why we think that's worth doing. But maybe the bigger point is we do need a critical mass of counties to go forward. So we're about to enter into the process with Louisville. They just last week opened up their process. We expect Lexington to follow shortly and Northern Kentucky to follow shortly. From our perspective, any one of those three move forward, we're in great shape. We're also talking with probably 30 other counties than the ones that we named today. For us, it's important that there be community involvement. But the reason to me that this is interesting and worth doing, I'm sorry, and one more piece. We submitted to the FDA, as many of you know, a couple of months ago. And so the FDA has been back to us twice with clarifications. They asked me to send all of our raw data about 2 days ago. So we're actively engaged with them. We are facing an interesting kind of race here, which is we could end up with FDA approval in perhaps April. So just to be open and clear, why would we still do a study if the FDA has approved this? And I think it's worth saying two things. The first is, in the study, we're now in a position of co-investing because the state backed out. So the cost is frankly lower than it would be commercially. But secondly, and maybe more important, our whole study was trying to do a thing that no one's ever done before, and that was to actually prove that you could use electrical stimulation to treat addiction. And people have been trying to prove that for maybe 40 years. And our study, we think, is the very first study ever to pull that off. Okay, that's outstanding, good on us. But that's not the real question. The real question is, when we treat people, do they get to return to normal life? And that really is what the SOBER study is seeking to establish, to demonstrate with real factual data by comparing the results to other people in treatment in Kentucky. And so, personally, I feel like the study is very important on its own because the goal that we have, the thing that has caused us to participate in this, in my case, for over 30 years, is not the ability to detoxify people or the ability to handle cravings. It's because the people that I know want their kids back. It's pretty simple. And so the study that we just did, the study we gave to the FDA, we have to have that to enter into commercial service. So we have to have that to make enough money to actually offer service anywhere in Kentucky. But the real thing that we would like to talk about people returning to normal life. And so that's a study that we're asking you to participate in. The cost on a per person basis is frankly lower than it would be commercially because we're co-investing. And I'm co-investing because I think that the real outcomes worth talking about are the restoration of people to normal life. So that's the situation we're in today. We have fewer counties aligned than we'd like. We think that the state not participating has made it difficult for us. We think that we will recover, but it will take a little bit longer than we thought. We think the recovery will actually be centered around some big counties being willing to take a big chance. And we think that of those three, Louisville, Lexington, and Northern Kentucky, that we've got a very good situation. We think that we'll know on at least one of those before the end of the year. So our request of you is really not really changed from what it was before. I think our position has changed a little bit. Our request of you is we need help. We need people to participate with us. We need people who share our vision that we'd like our sons and daughters to be drug-free in the long run without requiring medication for the rest of their life. And so I think for us it's pretty simple. I think the financial math is low compared to the cost of standard treatment. I know that the county doesn't typically bear that directly. My hope is that because this is money from drug companies, that the drug companies can help pay for some of the mess that they caused. But frankly, we're looking for early partners, people who share the kind of vision that we have, who are willing to take a bit of a risk and to take 30-some people from your county that you would know, that would be treated, that would come back home, and then let's see how they do. And the promise is that the majority of them are drug-free without medication. And if that's true, that's just astounding. That's worth investing in. I think that's my comment here for the moment, Judge. By the way, thank you, Judge, for giving me some time this morning. I really appreciate it. And the magistrates as well. Thank you. I should have started with that.
No.
I'm not a very good politician, Judge.
No.
Sorry.
Let me ask you a question, Joe and Jeff. Is there any opportunity that the state, on the state level, that the commission and the committee would reconsider their decision about funding?
Yes. If you follow what's happening in the state, you'll understand, or you will know about some of the difficulty around the choice that they made regarding Ibogaine. You'll know, for instance, that some of their members have stepped away now because of the situation that is unfolding. The state has expressed an interest to us in hearing back from us, and so we're talking with them about reapplying.
Okay. And then remind the court, with this investment, it's phased. It's $110,000 over 3 years. But the initial number of participants that you're wanting to get from Scott County is how many?
I think it's 34, and Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe that's the number. Oh, I just wanted to confirm that. And the reality is, we have to try to engage, or you all would have to try to engage individuals that are in active addiction, and really and truthfully, that's a requirement for the process. Correct?
Yes, we need to engage with people when they are currently in or just stopping their use of opiates. But also, our intent is to have a person that is dedicated to your county. And we would engage in helping to identify those folks, in helping to coordinate their movement into the treatment, and in helping to coordinate their movement back out into wraparound care. We're a real believer in wraparound care services. If you have them already, if Scott County has existing wraparound services, we'll plug it into those, and if they don't, we'll help make recommendations for people to go to places after they leave. And the kinds of places would be, depending on their own situation, is it sober living, but it could be getting them into university, it could be housing if it's a woman who has a difficult partner. There are a number of typical kinds of scenarios that we see coming out of treatment, and we would help that transition take place.
What other question does anyone from the court have?
Joe,
Go ahead.
Joe, I've got two questions. First of all, you said there's up to 34 participants. But that doesn't mean we pay an X amount of dollars to be in the program. That's up to 34. It's not a per participant cost, correct? It's if there's only 10 people that participate, then we pay $110,000 for 10 people, correct?
So, I'm sorry, I'll give you a little bit of a complicated answer. The way that we wrote the first contract said if you don't get 34, you get what you get in a period of time. But if you have more than 34, you get more than 34. So we did not make it per person. We have had one county come back to us and say, we would like to handle it on a per person basis. And in that case, we'll pay for the people that go in. If it's less, we'll pay less. If it's more, we'll pay more. Frankly, at this point, we're in a position that we could do it whichever way would be pleasing to this court.
Okay, the second question, Joe, is those participants, they have to, I would assume, have to sign waivers and volunteer to participate. They can get out of the program probably at their own request, correct? So they could start it and then they can get out, right?
That is correct. We are required by law to give a person the power to control their own participation, so they can participate or not participate at their will. But let me put that into context. The study is very non-invasive compared to the study that we've just finished in Kentucky. And by that, what I mean is The first study in Kentucky, we interviewed you every single week for 12 weeks after you were out. But this study is completely different. This study says you get treated for between 2 and 7 days. You can stay on at Isaiah House for probably up to 28 days if you wish, but that's up to you. But that's the last time that we're going to talk to you. What we do next is we go to KY Stats. And KY Stats says, I know who these people are that you treated, and I know that this is a matched group of people that got treatment, but not yours. And then we compared it. So there really is nothing to opt out of if you just receive NET. The study's very simple. It's just receive NET. We're going to help you with all kinds of wraparound services because we think that's the appropriate way to treat people. But the study itself is very simple. You get treated, and then KY Stats goes and looks at what is your educational record, what are your tax records, did you get employment, were you arrested, did you overdose? They take all that from the outside looking in, and that's how they compare the two pools, the people that were treated with NET and the people that were not. So it's not like there is something to opt out of. Having said that, by law, we could give a person the right to have their name removed from the KY Stats pool. Did I make that clear? Was that?
Yep, thank you.
If I could add to it, the study data we shared demonstrated that 98% of our participants received meaningful benefit of their withdrawal symptoms within the treatment period, which is, as Joe mentioned, 2 to 7 days. So if you ever know someone who's going through opioid withdrawals, the withdrawal symptoms can be quite severe, uncomfortable, painful. And since the device, as demonstrated in the previous data we shared, provides relief for 98% of participants, most of them don't want to leave because they enjoy that relief from those symptoms. So most people, if from this is from my personal experience, if they're going to bail on rehab, it's after the withdrawal period. But our whole treatment process takes place during that short 2 to 7 day period. So I wouldn't anticipate a lot of people wanting to bail on the study during that time when they're receiving relief from withdrawal symptoms. And another thing I would add about our study, as you're looking as a court on how to grant or disperse or spend your opioid settlement funds, one thing that we will provide to you is a quarterly report on how the participants from your county are doing based on the data that we get from the study. Depending on how they get in, we may or may not be able to give you personal identifiable information about them, but we can tell you this person is being viewed as having these attributes, if that makes sense. Whereas if you compare what we're asking you to give us money for, basically, to other places that might be good places to spend it, they might not be able to give you that data, or there might not be something measurable to say, well, we just gave such and such organization $100,000 or $50,000. What were the results from that? A lot of times when you do that, the answer you're going to get is, well, I don't know, we gave it to the organization and they seem to be doing good. We will actually have measurables that we can share with you for the money you're spending so you can know, what result did this have on our community. It didn't just evaporate into the atmosphere and we also say, well, I don't know, it went there and hopefully it did some good. So hopefully that's a little more information to help you realize why this could be a fiscally responsible move.
My hope, Jeff and Joe, would be if we elected to allocate funds towards this is that, quarterly we would have, you had 20 participants go through the net device treatment, and at this point, 17 of the 20 are employed and are not involved in drug use, or what, that kind of information is what the court would want to hear, I think. So Rick Hostetler would like to ask a question.
Thanks, Judge. Joe and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, and I want to share with the court. I got an opportunity just last night, unfortunately. I've been trying to get this accomplished for a while, but I watched that the movie The Final Fix. When was that study done?
I think The Final Fix was published in 2019. I think it was actually run in 2017.
Okay, yeah, because that y'all tracked, that took place over about a year, didn't it? I know the actual.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm bringing that up, and I would really encourage the other members of the court, it was eye-opening for me because, especially after hearing your opening comments here, the Final Fix, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I see it, if you watch that show, you're gonna see live and in color. They filmed this whole thing. You're gonna see, I think it's 5 participants. Only 4 made it all the way through. Am I correct about that? And one did not. And I'm not going to spoil it for you. You should watch it, and you'll see what they're talking about. Is that not the Final Fix? Is if the court watches it, or if the members watch it, it's an example of what this study is going to look like, because you show the process of how those folks sit down, go through the paperwork, what they're committing to, and the opportunity they can say no. And in fact, one fellow unfortunately does say no the second day in. Am I correct on that? And so the study you're proposing here is very similar to what you guys did with the Final Fix.
Yeah, Rick, actually the study we're doing here almost exactly parallels it. And I don't want to overstate, and frankly, I'm not allowed to make any statements about safety or efficacy. The FDA doesn't allow me to do that. But if you watch that film, the 4 people who received the full treatment, last I checked was last year, and all 4 of them were still drug-free. And I don't know what your own personal experience is, but that's 4 people who were treated and 4 people who were drug-free 6 years later.
They are still drug-free, Joe. I can confirm. I talked to 3 of the 4 just a few weeks ago, and the 4th, I talked to someone who knows him, so all still clean.
Yeah, it's an eye-opening. It's about an hour and 20 minutes of your time. You've shared the link with me, and we can share it with other members of the court if they're interested.
Please do.
Any other questions, comments? Ryan Pratt.
I have 2 questions about the study. The 2 charts where it says, were people able to maintain abstinent for 12 weeks? It says daily reports. Did you all test, or did you just ask if they were remaining abstinent from drugs?
Both. In order to get a green dot on that chart, they both had to test clean and say they were clean. So failing a test or admitting you took drugs, either one gives you a red dot. You need both things to have a green dot.
Were they, and then the next one is, how often do people use mods to stay abstinent? And then, it had 80%, 23. So did they do those in conjunction with the net, or was this a control group?
No. So first of all, there was a control group. There were people who really got treated, and there were people who got fake treatment. During the period of time, no one is allowed to get medication. MOUD is medication for opiate use disorder. That's like Suboxone. It's the fancy word for Suboxone. So during the period of the trial, you're not allowed to have any medication. And once the study is over, once the person stops using the device, they are completely free to say, hey, you know what, this didn't work for me. I want to have medication. And that right remains both while they're at Isaiah House and for the 12 weeks afterwards. Any moment in time, they can say, you know what, this is not working for me, I want meds. So what we were testing was, can a person not take opiates and also not say, and I need help, I need meds? And that's really what makes this study pretty unusual, frankly. Today, the best thing that we have for people who have opiate use disorder is medication. The best thing we've got for them is Suboxone. The notion that somebody could say, I'm not taking opiates and I didn't need Suboxone, that's very unusual.
Anything
So
else?
answer your question,
He gives us the thumbs up there, Joe. Any other questions? Rick Hostetler.
And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one of the things that is highlighted in this the previous study, the final fix, is they have those folks express no desire to go back even to the Suboxone. And in fact, I remember one of the guys commenting that trying to come off of Suboxone, that was his view, was worse than trying to come off of heroin. I kind of found that shocking. I mean, I thought Suboxone was something to help folks off. I don't know that much about it, but those guys are, well, you can watch it for yourself. That's why I really highly recommend it. When they shared that, and I thought, wow, but the device took care of that desire too. There's a whole list of things. I know y'all are familiar with it. It seems like there were over a dozen things that can be treated with this net device, and the desire goes away. It's pretty radical.
I have one more question. Is the control group data in the stuff that we got, or no? Or is this just...
The control group stuff in the packet that you got is there for the acute phase, the first 28 days, and is not there for the chronic phase. And typically that's the way it is, because what you're concerned with is, in the real world, a person will have received treatment. So what you want to know is, how did they do? Whereas when you're in the inpatient phase, what you want to know is, did the device have any effect? It's actually called device effect. And so one of the things this study did that no study has ever done before is that it showed the device itself provided a measurable difference in acute withdrawal severity reduction. That there's a real device effect. But once you get out of the study, once you get out of Isaiah House, the real question is, if you were treated with NET, you got treatment, what did it do to you? Were you able to not take opiates? And so that's typically the data that we would quote.
So going from there, identifying individuals that might be good candidates to get help. And I think the whole reason that we're here and talking is a desire to help individuals and let them get back to a normal life and have a chance for a normal life. We've invested funds from the opioid settlement dollars in a community paramedicine position. And I'm going to ask Chris Runyon, who's our director of EMS, to comment on this, but it's my belief that that position would be critical, because right now they're trying to wrap around services for individuals that are having a call for help for an overdose, trying to develop relationships to help them get services. But this would be an opportunity to kind of connect the dots with that individual to help, if that individual might be interested in this type of opportunity. The other is the jail, and then the other is, I would say, our drug courts and our hospital, most likely as well. Would you all agree with those statements? And would you have any other suggestions for how we would connect people if the court considered this proposal?
I would. First, I think it's outstanding that you've invested in a community position. We would make that our primary interface into the county. So that's outstanding. Most counties have not done that, and that's a very useful thing. We do, in fact, find it useful to talk to places where people are in acute distress, so emergency rooms. Jails is a little problematic. Usually by the time you get to jail, time has passed, and either you're already on medication or you've had to go through cold turkey withdrawal. I'm going to tell you a funny thing, which I don't really understand, but I see the benefit of. Our strongest mechanism for finding people is Facebook. I'm embarrassed because I'm not even on Facebook, so I don't know what to say about this. But the path that we have found to be most productive is there are internal communities of people who know one another, and they make internal referrals. Facebook seems to be the preferred mechanism, and that word of mouth is a principal driver for us. Families find out about it there. Individuals who have a community find out about it there. So somehow we, as a group of people, people are going to have to wrestle with how we make social media work to our benefit. That's going to be a bit of a learning process. But in the studies that we've done so far, the vast majority of the people who came in found out about us from the addict community itself.
Very good. With that said, Rick has one more question, and then I would ask, I would like to personally see a draft of how an agreement would look on a per-person basis, not to exceed X. And, you know, we can talk about that later, you know, early next week, and I could share what that would look like with the court. Rick, what?
Just going to go back to that comment in the Final Fix, the movie. One of the folks that is encouraged to apply to this program was an EMS worker in Louisville. Actually went to a person that they had been called to multiple times, and it was a lady EMS worker, and so she encourages this fellow to get involved in the study. And I won't mess up the movie, but which goes to what Joe said in your question, and Chris, I encourage you to watch this movie. It's eye-opening.
Well, Joe and Jeff, thank you. We'll talk early next week, and if you could look at, you know, I think that would be something to share with the court about, you know, a draft agreement that's on a per-person basis, not to exceed X dollars, to try to help the court wrap their head around possibly how that might work. Appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the time today.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Court.
Thank you. I now call Seth Johnson up to share with us. We're going to move on to our next topic, weeds and grass.
Weeds and grass.
So
very important.
Seth, of course, oversees code enforcement. We are a partner with code enforcement through the city, and appreciate the work he and his team does to try to help keep folks safe and keep things uniform across the county. Chad Wallace, I will turn it over to you to really lay it out, the concern that you have. And then I shared an email from Seth that kind of gave everybody a picture of the process and the timeline. Go ahead.
This request originated from Ironworks Estates HOA. They reached out to me about an issue they were having, and we dove into the ordinance a little bit. And prior to Judge Covington, Magistrate Livingston, and Hostetler, and I were on, and Kelly were on here as well. We changed and redid code enforcement, redid this ordinance. And I think what happened was at that point we had a flaw in the timeliness of areas that are identified in residential areas in the county outside the city limits. And Seth, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, yeah, so, and this was prior to me taking this position, so I was educated a little bit on what steps the fiscal court took then. So the way it works, code enforcement officers in our local, Sadieville, Stamping Ground, Georgetown, Scott County. Sorry, hear me now? Sadieville, Stamping Ground, Georgetown, Scott County. We all operate under the same standards, the International Property Maintenance Code that all four bodies adopted. It's the 2012 version. So the way it works, if there's a violation, then our code enforcement officers submit, they give the violation to the offender, right? And you have 5 days to correct that violation. On day 6, again, this is before the change, right? Where everyone was operating under the same standards. On day 6, code enforcement officers revisit the site, and if the violation still persists, then a citation is issued. Okay, at that point, that's when they have 7 days to correct the citation or appeal. Okay, then, and if they choose to appeal the citation, then that's everything ceases at that point, and then we go through the appeals process, right? 90% of the time, things stop at the notice of violation. A lot of times people don't understand that they're in violation, okay? We're trying to do a better job to educate the public on violations, but that's a whole different topic. So from what I understand, The fiscal court, I'm not sure what year that was, changed the process on the notice of violation from a 5-day turnaround time to 14 days. And I think the unintended consequence there was in residential neighborhoods in the county, now people roughly have 21 days, right, to correct an issue, because now the notice of violation is a 14-day period plus the 7-day period on the citation before it goes to the abatement process. So if you're living in a residential neighborhood, you have 21 days roughly. That doesn't count the weekends to abate or correct the violation. Is that?
Yeah, and at that point, your grass is already grown to
21 days and
10 inches. Is that correct? Or is it
10 inches is the, yes, anything over 10 inches is a violation.
So what would you like, or like the court to consider in regards to the ordinance?
Why did y'all change it? Maybe I don't understand that.
Well, let me, I'll answer that. It was felt like there's, out in the county, with the rural and agricultural environment, that there's a lot of absentee property owners, and then just that was the major issue, and that change came from that.
And I think also there was some change too because of property rights. And if you own a couple hundred acres and maybe you have some cars that are not really visible, but your neighbor gets mad at you and calls in and says, hey, they've got this going on over here, and then all of a sudden it ties up code enforcement, which that might be more applicable in the city than it is in the county. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And my focus is completely on the residential areas. And you all know, Longview, Homestead, Ironworks, Landslide, Victoria States. I represent all those folks, but also represent a lot of areas outside those subdivisions in the county. And so I think that's why we kind of adopted that threshold. But when you throw a penny and hit your neighbor's house, and you got grass that's real tall, that's country living, but it's also you're living in the subdivision. So my point, to answer your question, Judge, is I would want to see it similar to what we do in Sadieville, Stamping Ground, and the city of Georgetown in residential areas outside or out in the county.
I think the challenge for our staff at code enforcement is that we have to specifically name those residential subdivisions that would be included in that designation for the similar standard that's in the city of Georgetown, Sadieville, and Stamping Ground.
Yeah, can I speak on that just real quick?
That's why we have used.
There's some logistical issues because we operate under CityWorks computer software program, and everything's pre-populated. The International Property Maintenance Code, any of the violations, the numerics of those, everything's pre-entered. So when we go to start distinguishing between what's city and county, they made the necessary adjustments when the fiscal court made the adjustment from 5 days to 14 days. They've tackled that beast. However, it'd be my recommendation if we could go back to the way that it was previously, where everybody's under the same standard, everyone operates under the same amount of guidelines. However, we can take the county properties like on a case-by-case, like if it's zoned agricultural use, and quite frankly, we don't get many calls on that, right? The majority of your calls are residential properties because you're in a neighborhood, you're right on top of your neighbor, and it's affecting one another. We don't get a lot of calls at all on agricultural use properties or even things really out in the county, unless it's like an imminent danger, okay, like we're dealing with at 1782 Lexington Road, previously Paddock Motel. That would be my recommendation, and we could still operate on a case-by-case scenario when it comes to an issue, let's say that's way out in the county somewhere. And obviously that would depend on the violation, right? Are we talking about tall grass, right? Are we talking about a dangerous structure, right? What is the violation? I'm trying to be the most reasonable as I can as the director here and make sure everyone's playing fairly and playing by the same rules, but at the same time trying to distinguish between imminent danger and tall grass.
Questions and comments?
Well, there's still, in my mind, maybe I might have misunderstood you, but I get it for maybe the subdivisions that are out in the county, but are you saying that you really want it just to apply countywide? For example, there are many farms with one residence on it, and sometimes you see cattle in their backyard. I mean,
and unless, like, if that was a threat, a danger to somebody, I don't know if they have several acres, I would think tens of acres, right? What is it, 10 acres to have a farm?
Yeah, by law.
By law, right? I couldn't imagine that
Just
that example would interfere with a neighbor per se, but we would deal with that on a case by case.
How many neighbors are going to call
basis.
in on a person like that?
Now,
You don't have a neighbor.
had it happen.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, I'm sure it happens, but
I don't know. I don't get any.
common
No.
sense also rules for our folks. That
Sure.
say,
Yeah. And from what I understand, I think isn't it two twice a year? I think is the rule for agriculture use that has to be mowed twice a year. I think, and that's anything over 10 acres. We don't get calls on that.
I'm just curious, since we're, what about commercial? Is it the same?
I do not think so. No, I can look into that for you though.
I see just as many. I don't know if it's just the easement part of it, but we have just as many, especially in the city, commercial issues than we do residential. Some
And that
of
could
our
be right
bigger-
away. That
some
could
of our
be
bigger commercial partners.
right. It
So
could be
I think
state.
state right away.
Yeah, state right of ways. It's like twice, maybe 3 times a year.
Are you saying it's too difficult to distinguish out in the county something that's zoned A1, A5, whatever, ag residential or versus residential?
I don't think that would be the difficulty. It would be the internal process, going through that notice of violation first step, and having to distinguish between those, and then into our computer software system, the way it works, because it's all one standard, procedure of how it works, because everybody has adopted that International Property Maintenance Code. So that's how we operate. It does create some logistical issues in terms.
Would it be possible with CityWorks to have a drop-down menu that?
I've asked the same question, Judge, and I'm told no. Because once you start changing the format in CityWorks, it changes how the violation is even, the viewing pattern, how it's laid out, the template, it changes everything. I think we could probably find some ways to work around it. Whatever the fiscal court decides, right, we're gonna work with. But the recommendation would be keep everybody on the same playing field. Everyone operates by the same rules. Issues in the county, like you suggested, we could deal with those on a case-by-case scenario.
I have a question just out of curiosity, because I've got several 5-acre tract subdivisions in my area. So like you have one road where maybe there's 25-acre tracts that they've sold and there's a house. So just out of curiosity, like you've got 5 acres, 4 acres, you've got a horse pasture, and you've got your house on the front acre, and you let that property grow up in the back. Could those neighbors complain and ask for that to be mowed, or?
We don't get calls in that nature, no. I mean, if we do, it's very few.
Okay.
Very few. And then
I don't think it would be very few, but I'm just out of curiosity, like, is that an enforceable, like?
Again, we'd have to look at that agricultural use. If it's zoned agriculture, then possibly. But it could be up to twice a year as well, depending on the amount of
If it's not a
acres.
problem, I'm not going to create one, so.
Yeah,
But if you got a problem like that, you all have discretion, right? You go out
absolutely.
there
At the end of the
and
day,
use
it's
your
like-
judgment.
We're not in the business to drop the hammer on everybody, right? That's not what our goal is. It takes up too much of our time. And at the end of the day, it's what I believe is it's in the best interest of the city and the counties to have the offender abate the issues themselves, right? Because then, if not, then it ties up other resources. So our main focus is try to educate first. And like I said, 9% of the time when that notice of violation goes out, we'll get a phone call. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was a violation. They fix it, case closed, we moved on. It's 10% of those violators who want to buck the system or don't care or live out of the country or the state that we have trouble getting a hold of, and then you have dilapidated properties. That's what keeps us the most busy.
So is there basically maybe two things that you want to accomplish? You want to just make it basically the same standards countywide, but also in the county where we're at 14 days, you want to back that down to match the...
Well, right, to go back to the way that Sadieville, Stamping Ground, and the city of Georgetown operate under the notice of violation, the citation would stay the same because that wasn't changed. It would be taking that 14-day timeline on the notice of violation back to the 5 days.
Yeah, the 5 and 7 or whatever.
And it's 7 on, well, if you count weekend days, then you're at 7. Because if we issue a violation on a Monday, right, we're not going to show up until day 6, which is going to be a Saturday. But we're not here, so it would be the following Monday before we even showed back up for reinspection.
Well, my biggest concern is out in the rural parts, and even the scenario that Kelly just brought up is the mowing on a guy's property, more than 5 acres most of the time, but and it concerns me also when you say that you would do it on a case by case. I mean, does this allow you to do that? I mean, I can see that getting a little muddy too, it seems like. For example, when one guy finds out, well, you worked with this guy, but you're not willing to work with me. I don't know if that'll happen, but it has happened in the past.
Okay.
A few years ago, we had a lot of issues. And that's all settled down. I don't get many calls anymore on that, but several years ago, I got lots of calls. And code enforcement was, out there trying to do their job. So I'm just concerned in the rural parts of the county, which is what I have the privilege to serve the most of. Is mine is rural.
I understand
that district. So a lot of farming, and you're correct. There are a lot of absentee owners. Mm-hmm. They lease their properties out, and they're kind of leaving it to the guy running cattle or whatever. So I just didn't. I want those folks to have as much freedom as they can have with their property.
But we also want to protect the homeowner has to live next to somebody in a subdivision out in the county.
Well, yeah.
My property value is going to crap because my next door neighbor who lives 3 feet.
In that subdivision atmosphere, but occasionally you're going to get roads where out in the county where there's several homes in a row.
Right.
It's not really a subdivision.
Right.
They all got
back to back.
20 acres, 50 acres. Next guy's got 100 acres, and they're kind of close together. So that would go to that case to case, and it could get a little muddy.
Well, I think we need I need to look at the rules on how many acres, right? The threshold until it meets that agriculture use, and how many times a year that you need to.
Is that in there? Is that in
the email?
No,
it's in the
international property maintenance.
Yeah, it's
code.
in that international property maintenance.
Okay.
The big.
Well, that and it also could be in your Scott County Code of Ordinances.
So could we ask you to clarify that and then share with the court, and then let's continue the conversation forward, and then.
And for you're the one that has to kind of manage the in between of the bigger farms that we want to try to keep out of this world, but also how do we help the subdivisions out in the county? So
Correct.
From your management standpoint and manpower and the system that you have to use that we don't have a clue about, what do you feel is the best recommendation to split that?
Split it.
Yeah. And I don't know that it's splitting it. You tell us, what is your, and then we can argue about how to do it. I mean, we don't know what you have to do. We don't know how to use your software.
Right. Again, my recommendation would be to reverse, but I understand Mr. Hostetler's point as well. So how do we address those concerns, way out in the county? For sure, I understand that 100%.
So is it
that's the tricky part here.
But then I'm maybe adding some language.
Right.
To certain size.
I was going to say maybe it's an acreage issue.
Right.
If I remember correctly, when we've talked about this before, and somebody's got, say, 3 acres to clean up, and they legitimately have a mower down, and Mead Tractor says we're 2-3 weeks out before we
we're
even
going to
look
work
at
with
it.
those people. Yeah,
right.
That's a
and that's where the case by
right.
case has to come in.
Of course.
And I know where Rick's coming from because it's hard to, because some people feel like things are made exceptions for some people and not others, but you have to work on a case by case.
Well, if people are willing to work with us, and we do with it all the time, right? We get it. It's going to be day 8 before I'm back from vacation. It's going to be, I'm out for the month. Absolutely, right? Like I said, 90% of the time, these things are solved in-house. We don't have to worry about them. And that's because we work with individuals that want to work with us.
What does the appeals process look? Because you said somebody could appeal their. So who does that go before?
So, well, let's see here. There's a process, Mr. Pratt. If you appeal the process, now you are requesting a hearing in front of a hearing officer, right? So then we would make our case, they would make their case, and an officer would decide. A hearing officer would decide. They can appeal that process. Then it goes to the hearing board. And then they can also, if they don't like the outcome there, correct me, then they can take it to circuit court, and that's the final. Yeah, it can go, and everything ceases at that time. So when they appeal something, it stops. It's done until the appeals works its way.
Is the hearing officer and panel, are they like, is that an independent body?
So the hearing officer is the first thing, and that, I think, is a local, I've only had to do one.
Join the appointed board.
Well, yeah, but that's the second step. The board, the hearing board is.
Random attorney, not random, but.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I.
Yes, it is.
Not the favorite attorney.
Like prosecute the case.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's like an independent.
It's a separate attorney, a separate hearing officer, a judge.
I mean, to me, it seems like there's a process to handle, the issues that we're talking, like, an independent person and board and to handle those issues.
If they want to appeal, then absolutely. Okay. There's a process for sure.
Yeah. So we could talk about this for 3 hours because it just generates more and more questions.
More and more questions.
What I was going to say, if the pleasure of the court and Judge Covington, can you put into writing to us your recommended changes, and then that way, if we have questions, we can discuss those with you and. Rather than try to solve the entire problem today.
All right. We will get you to
want to
share
do the
some
whole thing
data
today,
from
Ryan.
the property maintenance code, and then any recommendations, and then we'll talk from there.
I didn't realize that. One other question, kind of on the topic, but not. A few years back, we used to get a quarterly report on outstanding cases going on in the county, or.
Yeah. I can do that. Absolutely.
I don't want to put an extra burden on you, but
no, not at all.
That was beneficial when we were getting it.
Yeah.
No, and that's helpful. The data is helpful.
Quarterly, something like that.
And are you just wanting pretty much numbers like?
I think it was a spreadsheet.
Spreadsheet of pending cases. And status.
Quarterly. You want city too? Everything or just county?
We just.
County.
Well, that would be us. We'd be the city.
That's I know some of you represent. Right.
That's all I got.
That's all I got.
That's all we have. So.
Then I'll provide everything.
Yeah. All right.
That's
Thank you very much.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Seth Johnson. All right. With that said, I know Sheriff Hampton had a piece of business that he wanted to mention to you all, and then we're going to have to adjourn this meeting.
I'll be really quick. We totaled a vehicle this week, transporting a prisoner. Deer ran out in front of it. Anyway, it's one that we had recently put a good amount of money in. I think it was JR, $3,000 or $4,000 for transmission. Anyway, so I'm going to be requesting an emergency purchase next meeting, maybe once Stacy finds out what insurance is going to pay. The only
What
thing
kind of
available-
vehicle?
I'm sorry.
What kind of
It was
vehicle?
an Explorer.
Okay.
Everybody all right?
And, yeah, that's what I was going to say next. Is everybody
Yeah,
okay?
he's fine. He's fine.
What
He had
about
a
the
prisoner
deer?
with him. He's fine too. So,
Good.
but anyway.
Can you get vehicles right now? Can you get?
Well, so I got an email during this meeting. So there's some Silverados that'll be in next month, and they're about the same. The Tahoes are going up to 55,000 from what they were last year at 48, I think. So Silverado's about 53.
Was this transport for our local jail?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually happened in Washington County. So.
All right. Thank you for that update, and we'll look for more information. Any other business or such from the court members or any of our guests or audience?
Yeah. Again, November 16th, I would like for everyone to attend
I'm registered. So I had one question, and remind me, David, and help me who I might need to direct this. Chip wants to go to like one session on cybersecurity. It's $350. Will they prorate, or you got to pay all for? Chip just wants to go to one session.
There's some things you shouldn't ask publicly, and you should have just said Chip wants to go to one session, and he could have been David Livingston for the session.
All right, we'll navigate that way.
I'll ask.
All right. We'll navigate it. All right. Thank you all very much, and we'll close out this meeting and see you next. Reminder: we're meeting next Thursday at 9 a.m. because of Veterans Day on Friday. So next meeting next Thursday, 9 a.m.